All right, now we have chapter 11, November. It's called Moon Cakes Without Grandfather. And you can see, it's kind of hard to see in this, but it looks like it's the city at night here, all the buildings. You can see there's some of the skyscrapers, and then there's the full moon. Leaning out the kitchen window, Shirley and her parents watched the crescent moon drift through the clouds. Below, a lone maple shivered in the wind, shedding leaf after leaf that scooted down the lane without so much as a backward glance. No one spoke. All knew they were thinking the same thoughts. How could they have let the eve of the Mid-Autumn Festival slip by without realizing it? Americans did not commemorate the fullest moon of the year, but the Wongs had done so for centuries. If Grandfather had not sent the moon cakes, would they have remembered at all? True, the clan was far away and there was no courtyard to gather in, but that was all the more reason for them to recall the glow of reunion under the stars. Each had an excuse. Mother had not been feeling well. Father had been toiling day and night to repair the leaks that sprouted throughout the house like chicken pox. And Shirley had been moping for weeks over the loss of the World Series. But no excuse eased the sadness that welled in their hearts. Now the moon itself disappeared, swallowed by a fitful cloud. Father closed the window, and together the family returned to their seats at the dining table. On each plate was a golden moon cake, filled with lotus seeds and honey. Shirley started to take a bite, then stopped. She did not deserve such a delicious treat. A tear escaped. Then another. Mother dried her cheeks, smiling a brave smile. Let us pretend we were there, and tonight is the 15th day of the 8th moon. This table, the altar in the garden of celestial harmony. This covering, not oilcloth, but red brocade, embroidered by the ladies of the House of Wong. This bowl, not empty, but one of 5 filled with grapes, apples, peaches, melons, and pomegranates, offerings to the gods for the longevity of our clan. This salt incense, this pepper candles, and all around, Shirley said, transported by the dream, flowers, in the air the smell of jasmine, overhead the biggest and the brightest of moons, so near that we can see the hare that stands under the cassia tree, pounding the elixir of life in a jade mortar. The paper lanterns are dancing in the willows while a musician plays on the lute. There sit my father and mother, Father continued, surrounded by clansmen. The harvest is in, and we are all together from near and far to celebrate with the reading of poetry, to bond the bond of all bonds, family. Once again no one spoke, but this time the silence was gentle, like a pause in a beautiful music when one melody ended and another is yet to begin. At last Shirley spoke. What do you wish, my daughter? I wish I were the girl in Grandfather's story. Which one? The one about the daughter and the loving bride. My father tells so many, it's hard to be sure. Surely you tell it again. This too will bring us home. She nodded, then began telling it as Grandfather would, slowly. Long, long ago there lived a most honorable man who owed much of his good fortune to the kindness of a friend. And so when their wives were both with expectant happiness, they vowed, even before the babies left the womb, that one should be a girl and the other a boy, and they would be married. And indeed a daughter and a son were born. Before the children could crawl, the friend was named by the emperor to an important post in the capital. On the day he left, his last words were, "When my son is of age, he will come back to claim his bride." To which the father replied, "No other honor could make us as happy or as proud." The years passed, and the child grew into a maiden admired by all for her beauty and goodness. One day, while she was walking by the river, she happened upon a young fisherman. Although they had never met before, they immediately knew that the fates had decreed for them a love as faithful as the North Star. And so when it was time for him to go upriver, she ran away with him. They lived happily as man and wife, but always there was sadness too. Not a moment passed that they did not think of her poor parents and the dishonor of a promise broken. After they'd been away 10 years, the daughter implored her husband to return to her hometown. "I cannot live any longer without begging my parents for forgiveness." When the boat anchored along the banks where they first met, the daughter asked the fisherman to go ahead to explain. He agreed, asking her to come along an hour later. At the house, he fell upon his knees before his in-laws and confessed the wrong he and her daughter had done. The couple looked mystified. How can this be? How can this be? Our daughter has never left home. She has always been at our side. She had never been married, for her betrothed died in battle. Now it was the husband who cried, How can this be? How can this be? Precisely at that moment, the garden echoed with temple bells. In the distance were two women, one to the left of the cypress tree and one to the right. Slowly they walked toward each other. Beneath the evergreen boughs, the two figures merged into one. She came into the house and kowtowed 3 times before the fisherman and the old man and his wife. She was no stranger, but the love of their hearts. She was wearing 2 gowns, one that belonged to the fisherman's daughter, one that belonged to the daughter. For many moments there was no sound save the hum of the refrigerator in the next room. Then Shirley said in a small voice, It is so sad, mooncakes without grandfather. When will we all be together again? Perhaps someday. Someday soon? The question hovered in the air hauntingly. So she wanted to be in 2 places at once. And that is the end of our chapter. We should have 1 chapter left. So that was the end of chapter 11, November.